lives pretty near to the mine. And then it would be Steve and Debbie Zischke, who are cousins of the Ernies. Okay, so that's who we are. We're pretty well family oriented. We're a family mine. This will be a family business. We're from the area. Pretty much lived here all my life. The Ernies have lived here all their lives, as far as I know. So we are, to clear up a little clarification after reading our proposal that you received. There were two different companies formed for this application. It was our understanding that we wanted to join two land parcels together. We were to form one company to come under one permit. The Zir LLC was formed for that reason. It was a conduit between the landowners to come in under one permit. A second company, Badger Bluff Sands LLC, which all of the members of Zir are members of Badger Bluffs LLC. However, there may be more members in the future. We anticipate more investment for people, and so there may be more members coming in and being part of the company, which is why they're separate. There's been some question about that, and I wanted to clarify that. I don't know if you all understand that, but if I intend to answer any questions after my presentation here, if you have any questions about it. So, our proposal is for 10 years for the mining phases. We have 3 distinct mining phases within our proposal: phase 1, 2, and 3. We also are proposing for a wash plant facility on site. We plan to produce or process up to 500,000 tons a year. Truck out of the valley, 100 trucks per day maximum. I would like to see the average somewhere around 80, hopefully no less than that. If you do the math there, the phases should add up to about 5.5 to 5 3/4 years of mining. We are coming in for a 10-year because we're planning for the unforeseen. We'd like a little latitude to play the market and a little latitude to like I said, to prepare for the unforeseen. We don't know how long it's going to take us to get into every phase. So there will be setup and tear down time, with the conveyors and so on and so forth. That brings up another point. Product is to start out in phase 1 next year, next spring, summer, as is for the plan. That will be the shortest phase of the proposal. If everything goes as planned, should take us about a year, and then we would move on to phase 2. All of the product within our mine will be transported in the mine parcel via conveyors, land conveyor system. There will be no haul trucks, no load trucks operating within the mine to move product. Okay. Excavation will be done with your typical excavating equipment: backhoes, bulldozers, bobcats, front end loaders, so on and so forth. So, as I said, we anticipate it being a 10-year proposal. The wash plant does have a lease for 20 years. Okay. From that point, I guess, I'm just trying to give you a brief overview of what our proposal is. I'll sit back and answer some questions. Again, I want to emphasize that we are from Buffalo County. We are not some big mining company that's coming in here, which I've heard, many people criticize for having that come into Buffalo County and threaten and scare landowners. We want to do this ourselves. We're invested in the land. We do not plan to sell the land. We do not plan to sell the CUP. If we do receive one, we plan to do this ourselves. We want to be accountable for the residents of this county. We are residents of this county. So that being said, I guess I'll open up to any questions. I'll try to answer everything myself. John Dustman does have a slide presentation prepared for us. Unless some other members of the team here wanna offer something up, I'll answer some questions right now.
Actually, if you want to make your full presentation, then we'll take public
Okay.
comments. That way they have an opportunity to really understand
Then
what's going on here.
You bet. Then I'll pass this off to John Dustman, Summit Environment Solutions. Excuse me.
Thanks, Kevin. My name is John Dustman. I'm a geologist and hydrogeologist for Summit Environment Solutions. And a picture is worth 1,000 words, so I thought we'd start kind of out at the county level, So you can kind of see where we're talking about within the county. It's this little dot kind of in here. So I can turn on the street maps, and we can get an idea then of where this is in relation to 88 coming out to Highway 35. So now we're going to zoom in a little bit, and we'll take the street map off and put the topography map on, topographic map. And again, this is very similar to some other projects in some ways, but it couldn't be more different, in my opinion, than most of the ones that I've worked on. The most similar one that I've worked on is the Ryan Barth mine down by Dodge, and this would be kind of a similar project in that the bedrock geology here is different than most of the other proposed mines within the county. This is actually a Jordan clay.
John, I'm sorry. Guys, would it help if we dim the lights somewhere? I'm having a hard time seeing it myself, actually.
Yeah, because somebody, thanks, yeah, you're right.
There we go.
A lot of people are familiar with the Wani Walk sandstone, and that's shown in red on this bedrock geology map. A bedrock geology map are the rocks that are underneath the soil. So if you were to scrape the soil off, these are the rocks that you would anticipate to encounter underneath the ground. And they're it's from younger rock in the blue. This is the Frasier dolomite that is used for class 5, when people call it limestone or even gravel. But this is where your quarries have been for the last 100 years to make the county roads and the state roads. Beneath that, in this yellow band, is a 100-foot thick sandstone formation called the Jordan sandstone. And the Jordan sandstone has two members. The upper one is called the Van Oser, the bottom one is called the Moorwalk. The proppant material is really only found in the Van Oser material at the top of the formation. So the upper 30 to 60 feet, in some cases, has the material that meets the quality standards for use as proppant. Then beneath that is the Tunnel City, and then the Wani Walk, and then the Eau Claire. So this property, if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that it has Jordan sandstone outcropping right underneath the hills in these areas. The map is actually a little bit wrong. This is done by the Wisconsin Geological Survey, and they can't know every piece of ground underneath the soil. And so the Jordan sandstone actually dips down into the northern part of this parcel here. What I've done on the digital elevation model is highlight kind of the areas where the sandstone is present. And this is between an elevation of about 1040 to 980. So that would be the target. And hence, when I turn on the mine area layers, you can see that here's the mine boundary, here are the mine areas. So I'm going to zoom in even further now. So you can see that these mining areas were coincident with the occurrence of Jordan sandstone at the surface.
I'm going to correct you there too, John. That is actually the property boundaries, not necessarily the mine boundaries.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the green one that I turned on. You're correct. The green layer is the green area, here's the mining area. And you can see that we're talking about a much smaller operation here. The mine areas individually are 14 acres, 16 acres, 27 acres, and that's the whole mining area. That's not the area of disturbance. The entire area of disturbance for the project is about 25 acres. So that's the entire permitted area that would actually have sandstone taken out of it. So this is a kind of a small footprint type project, in my opinion. So how do we go about designing a way to do this responsibly? In phase 2, we're I think probably the most important part of any type of beginning process is to properly get your topsoil separated and stockpiled. And this kind of serves two purposes. We're getting soil stockpiled kind of down gradient to help with some of the water issues. But as you excavate out this sand, you're basically creating a terrace on the side of a hill. All these different colors are different elevations. So you can see we're literally on the side of a hill here. Here's the top, and here's the valley. So we're coming in through this valley here. And this is phase 2. And here's a typical phase 3. And now just the opposite, the slope's going the other way. This is high, the black is low, and so we want to stockpile the topsoil down below. There shouldn't be a lot of water issues just because, again, this is going to become quite a wide terrace, maybe 50 to 200 feet wide, and it's pure sand on the bottom. We're not going all the way to the bottom of the Jordan, so there's very permeable sand that will be left on the terrace and will serve to filter the water. I believe this is the right way if you're going to take sand. I really do believe that this can have some major benefits for the watersheds down below. All this water that is part of the problem, we all know in Buffalo County the amount of erosion that goes on in these valleys. And you can't stop it because when it rains there's so much water that gains so much velocity down these steep ravines that it picks up a lot of sediment and puts them into, in this case, Wamedy Creek. So we have overburden piles, we have an infiltration basins, we have stormwater ponds. It's not in this particular phase, but I'll turn it on. And then I'll zoom out to the whole, zoom out to see all 3 phases. And so you can see there's been quite a bit of engineering done to kind of design where things go and how the best way to move things are. The conveyor essentially connects the different mining areas and gets the sand to the wet plant for processing. There are the sand stockpiles. We've done a pretty thorough well search of the area. These blue dots, I'm going to turn off the DEM. The blue dots represent local wells that are in the DNR database within about a 2-mile radius. They are generally in the area of 50 to 100 feet, 150 feet deep. The wet plant wells that would be put in would require a high capacity permit. It will be in the Mount Simon Formation, hundreds of feet below the existing domestic well aquifer that's being utilized. So we don't see a lot of opportunity for well interference between this well and the domestic wells. But of course, that would all be required to be studied by the high capacity permit. The DNR would require us to record water levels in these wells during a pumping test to assure that there is no connection between the shallow and the deep aquifer. So that is a large 30,000 foot view of what is being proposed. This is what the current landscape looks like. This is the aerial photo draped over the digital elevation model, and it is not exaggerated. This is 1-to-1 scale, horizontal to vertical. So this is kind of the area that we're looking at. We're now looking south. We're now looking kind of down from the west, looking east. That's from the south, looking north. And from the west, east, looking west. And so most of the activity that's being done up in these areas really probably won't be perceptible from the ground. Certainly you wouldn't see this backside over here. This certainly will be visible from Sheps Valley Road, minus the berming that would take place with the topsoil. One thing that this style of mining is conducive for is the reclamation back into what I call a bluff trail. And this is a plan view then. Here's the high ground, here's the low ground. This is actually a reclamation that we designed for the Ryan Barth mine, and it certainly applies here. This is probably what it'll look like when it is reclaimed with openings. The idea here is that you create a flat terrace where water can't go down these valleys anymore. It has to percolate down through the sand. And so some of the groundwater conditions that are not currently feeding the streams is called base flow. If your stream isn't receiving groundwater, it's not getting base flow. And quite frankly becomes more like a sewer than a stream. And in this case, I believe that we can restore base flow to the streams downhill from these terraces, because all this water that would have just run into the streams is gonna take weeks, months to get back to the groundwater to be able to then be filtered back into the stream. The other concept here is to get some native vegetation back on these hillsides. These hillsides are not what they were pre-settlement. And so we're looking at trying to restore some native vegetation up in and amongst the terrace with oak openings. Obviously, the deer habitat is fantastic. The animals will love this terrace up on halfway up the side of these hills. So that's in plan view. In cross section, we kind of see that the idea is basically you're taking a notch out of the side of the hill, you slope it back slightly in case you were to get some unbelievable deluge of rain. You're basically then reclaiming that with the topsoil that's originally stockpiled and burned on the outside. You spread that back, do your plantings along your terrace, and you do create both wet and dry cliff environments, which is something that the DNR has identified as a good opportunity for restoration in this area of the state because of the very flora and fauna that are only found in eyewall cliff environment. Obviously, it would be secured with a fence at the top, but the other thing that a lot of people, I don't think, realize is that because these trees on the downhill side won't be taken, these are 50 to 60 feet tall. And so really the only way this is going to be visible would be somebody across the valley at an elevation of equal or higher elevation, because if you're down on the road, you just won't be able to see anything that's going on in this area. So this is just a general cross-section of what the proposed reclamation would be for this type of contour type mining. With that, Kevin?
You bet. Thank you, John. Do we want lights again? Thanks, John. And John mentioned, and I'm gonna also say too, our stormwater plan, and you'll find more out about that in the reclamation plan, is geared more towards the 100-year rain event or storm event, not the 10-year that the DNR does require. And I'm gonna let Scott Bell-Savage talk about that a little bit more when it's his turn. And I did want to mention too that we're in exceedance of the compliance levels of all the regulatory agencies that govern this industry. Water testing, we plan to, within a quarter mile of our wash plant, monitor domestic wells, okay, to establish a baseline. We are also planning a test well for the water depth, okay? Also not required. And we just recently agreed to provide air monitoring as well. I know that's been a concern for our neighbors in the county and in the valley, and we feel obligated to do that. We're planning for an upstream or an upwind and a downwind air monitoring system. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott Bell-Savage if he has anything to offer technically, or
Not at this point.
Okay.
I'd rather ask answer
maybe just, okay, redirect or answer questions. I'll turn it over to you guys. I'll await your questions.
Okay, well, if that's your presentation, which is fine, we'll go through and have some public comments here.
Sure.
The committee, and after that, then we will, committee and staff may have some questions for you. Like usual, everybody was asked to sign in. If you wish to speak here tonight and did not sign in, please do so in the back. We've got several people signed up here. Just a few ground rules for the public comments tonight. I'd ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes. I will try to notify you when you have 15 seconds left. We're here to take testimony based on this presentation you just heard, so make them site-specific, not being critical of our zoning ordinance, policies, staff, the committee. Understand that this is near and dear to some people's hearts here. can be very passionate. Everybody should have their opportunity to speak, but I asked through the time constraints that we try to not be super redundant tonight. Make your point, so everybody has a chance. And I asked if there's no personal attacks, profanity, or disruptive behavior during the comments or the rest of the meeting. So, with no further ado, Steve Willardson, Cochran, has signed up to speak, and then followed by Cindy Welch. Ask if you'd come up here to the podium here to my left, your right, and use the microphone there.
Good evening. So I'd like to leave you with a couple sets of documents.
Closer to the mic again, please.
I'd like to leave you with a couple sets of documents tonight. One being a petition. After the Federal Sands had mentioned at a Wamedy meeting that they had contacted neighbors, we found that difficult to believe. They had said that they had contacted neighbors and neighbors were okay with it. We had contacted, so we found that hard to believe, so we made a few calls, and found out that nobody had been contacted that we called. Not saying that they didn't call neighbors, but the people that we called were not contacted. So we started a petition, went around and got names of, we got a list of people in Shepps Valley and Wolf Valley, just local, and we asked them if they wanted to sign a petition, to go ahead and sign the petition. That's why I'm going to leave that with you tonight. And then also I have a copy of a Town of Wamedy survey that was sent out, and you'll see some results on here. Now these results are a little bit old, but you'll see that we had a 45% response rating, which is incredible for the average of most surveys, and that 72% do not approve of a frac sand mine in the area. And just because tonight you don't see the number of people that we had in the Alma school for the Starkey meeting, I don't want you to think that those same people that did not approve of that, have changed their minds. The people still do not want this type of industry in our area. And I'd like to, you've heard all the same things about health problems and the fact that frac sand and acrylamides that are being used for washing have MSDS sheets. All that, but
15 seconds.
I'd like to leave you with just saying that let's not learn from our mistakes. Let's not make this mistake and have to learn from it. Let's learn from other communities that have approved mines and then now are living with that problem. That's very hateful business and a very hateful thing for neighboring people.
Thank you. Cindy Welch, George Direct, do you want to speak to this one? You're still here?
No.
Okay. Tim Ziegler, do you want to speak? Okay, Emily Gray?
I would like to share.
Okay, go follow her. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Cindy Welch. I live in Shepps.
Microphone, please. Closer.
I'm Cindy Welch, Shepps Valley, very close to the proposed sand mine operation. I am opposed to the mine. I'm concerned about the erosion, despite what Kevin says about the contamination possibly of Shepps Creek and the Wamedy River. I'm opposed to the noise pollution that will occur and the scarring of the land that will never be fixed with the reclamation process. I'm worried about the safety on Shepps Valley Road. The road starts out in poor condition. It isn't wide, it has marginal, if any, shoulders, and adding snow and ice to it will make it even more dangerous when the sand trucks are hauling. I'm saddened also by the effect that the potential mining has had on the people in the valley and with their relationships to each other. Kevin says they're going to do all of the mining themselves. They're not going to be bringing in another company to do it. And that concerns me, that they would have the knowledge that they would need to be able to do it safely, to do it right, and not to be making mistakes. I guess that's all I have to say, just reiterating that I am against it.
Thank you. Okay, Emily Gray, followed by Kevin Cassidy.
My first question would be directed to Mr. Dustman in his presentation. What do you expect to happen to the ecosystems, both micro and macro, when in reclamation you restore conditions prior to sediment pollution? And then also to whomever wishes to answer the question, is the company offering third-party air monitoring?
Kevin Cassidy, followed by Bob Miller.
Good evening, Kevin Cassidy. As a resident of Alma, I oppose the Badger Bluff application. I have to compare it to a river dike. Once the trickle starts, erosion will get bigger and bigger. This application wants 100 loads or 200 truck movements daily back and forth. Yes, there are trucks running through Alma right now. But this mine application, along with the Segerson mine and the Larson Johnson mine, bring approximately 1,200 extra truck movements by the Alma School daily. When is too much? A small crossing between the post office and the drugstore in the city of Alma, which daily gets old people crossing very slowly. When is too much? When is too much through the city and town of Nelson? More and more tourists are discovering and coming to Alma. And the old Wisconsin saying was, escape to. Or maybe it's up to you now, escape from. I ask you all to oppose this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Miller, followed by Paul Zagilski.
I'm here tonight representing two areas. One of them is the fact that I am a soil scientist with some experience in reclamation. I've talked about reclamation over and over again. I don't know how many meetings I've addressed it. I've yet to see reclamation done by any of the mines that I've seen in Trempealeau County or anywhere else. The Board of Adjustment has to consider reclamation and reclamation as mining progresses as at least a compromise to what's been going on. So I hope any recommendation from the zoning committee will consider, absolutely consider reclamation plans and also the fact that reclamation has to be done simultaneously with the mining. Otherwise, it really is an eyesore. Please, please consider it. I've said it so many times, it seems so redundant, and yet I have not seen any action by the zoning committee or the board. I'm sorry about that. I hate it. It bothers me that no one is considered, and I have not been called, even in a private conversation, to consider what I have to offer professionally. Next thing, and it was just talked about, do you realize, and I know that Jim does, and the people that are on the finance committee, that this Wisconsin's Great River Road, Highway 35, has been voted the most outstanding, beautiful highway in the United States. Now that's not a small accomplishment. When you hear about all of this highway traffic, and I as a commissioner of the Mississippi River Parkway Commission and recently elected pilot of the 10-state Parkway Commission, sit here tonight again asking you to consider the cumulative effect of traffic. It is something that affects tourism, it's something that affects the beauty of this area, and please, 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 ladies and gentlemen, let's get responsible. It's a moral issue. It's a scenic issue. It's a financial issue.
Thank you. Paul Jagilski, followed by Errol Dorr.
I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm the gentleman that sent the four of you a letter. And there were a couple of points made in the letter, and I certainly hope that you had the time, taken the time, to read the letter carefully. My major concern is water. I am east, northeast of the proposed mine site. I am one of the fortunate few who has a shallow well up on Canada Ridge. I am only down 190 feet. Everybody around me is down between 400 and 900. I'm very much concerned that that mine, which will be about a mile from my property, a little over a mile, will do something with that groundwater. I certainly would like to have some kind of protection. You talk about a quarter mile away from the mine? That's kind of ridiculous. All the water flows from the northeast to the southwest in Buffalo County. And that's where my water is going to end up, in that hole. And I'm concerned about it. And secondly, just to reiterate a bit, let's learn from Buffalo County. They've gone wild. They would have one day 1/3 of the mines mining sand in the state of Wisconsin. But they put a stopper on it just 2 months ago. They are now carefully studying some very serious possible mistakes that they've made. So I ask you, please don't rush into this. Consider all of these things. Let's learn from those who are now reconsidering what they have done already. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Errol Dorr, followed by John Bertzer. Okay, Dennis Bork will follow Errol Dorr.
Just a few things. I'd like to say, I mean, our county's broke. We need to open our doors to business and industry. We've had our moratorium. We've had our safety precautions set. We've got a very good policy and procedures to monitor all these mines, which there aren't many here. You know, we need in this industry. We need this. We need something in Buffalo County. And what else is there? So that's all I got.
Thank you. Dennis Bork, followed by Nick Olson.
Good evening, Dennis Bork. Thank you for letting us come and speak tonight. I'm gonna make mine short and sweet. I think this county is in dire need of industry. We've lived off the agricultural industry for a long time, and we still will, but the agricultural industry has changed drastically. So other industries would not be a bad idea to start bringing into the communities and help out. So I am very supportive of this, Sam. Thank you.
Nick Olson, followed by Jordan Duelman, Buffalo City.
I'm Nick Olson, Town of Wamedy. I support sand.
Short to the point, thank you. Jordan Duelman, followed by Nettie Rosenthal.
My name's Jordan Dillman. I live in Buffalo City. I'm a lifelong resident of this county. I've been operating heavy equipment since high school. 2 years ago, I left an out-of-state, good-paying job for an opportunity of employment in the industrial sand industry back in my home county. For the past 2 years, I've been employed as an operator at a successful sand mine in Platts Valley, in Buffalo Township, here in Buffalo County. Some in the public want you to believe that this industry will be detrimental and not beneficial for those that live here. I'm here as a testament to the contrary. I make a wage far and above the county's average wage, which has greatly increased my annual income. Who among the critics of this industry has considered the cumulative effect of those additional dollars I earn and largely spend in this county? Who among the opposition has considered the cumulative effect of what that means to my fiance and my children? Our mine has a great track record in Buffalo County. Why don't I hear that from the opposition? I'm here tonight to support Badger Bluff Sands and River Valley Sands. I consider myself to be the face of what the opposition in this industry doesn't want you to believe is achievable for the residents of this county. Well, they are wrong, and it's time someone from the county employed in this industry stood up and let you know the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Nettie Rosenthal, followed by Leon Kamrowski.
Nettie Rosner, Wamedy.
Speak
Um,
up, speak up.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to know if the letter that you got from the Wamedy Township included any of the concerns that the people of Wamedy Township actually had. The letter that I saw basically just said they approved it and with one condition. But there were a lot of people there. Mr. Taylor was there, I know, and Mr. Ziegried. There were a lot of people speaking, and I don't think their concerns were taken seriously or recorded for you to look at. And I just wanted to make that statement and make it clear. Also, I'm concerned that this another application, another 2 applications, that we don't have the staff in Buffalo County to actually carry that through to protect the citizens of Buffalo County. I also have a question about the Mr. Rich's. I've been to lots of Wamedy town meetings, and when those concerns about the Sheps Valley Road, and he knows that he will be responsible for repairing that or upgrading it, and he made the statement, and it's recorded in the minutes, that if it cost him $500,000, which it will or more, to bring that road up to haul conditions for the type of trucks he wants and the number of trucks, it would be like in the neighborhood of $500,000. And he said if the township made him pay that, he couldn't go ahead with this project. Well, that makes me kind of perplexed, because now he's going to have a wash plant. That's got to cost more than $500,000. So who's going to actually fix the road or bring that road up to specs in Sheps Valley, 2 miles of town road? So we don't really know. When the people of Wamedy Township really had questions about who was going to fix that road and how much it would cost, none of those questions were answered. It was just all papered over. The thing was sent on to you, and I think it deserves more consideration than that. Thank you.
Leon Camero, don't say it about.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. I'm Leon Kamrowski. I have 3 sisters, 2 brothers, and we own the property that is to the west side of phase 2 and 3 of this mine site. I'm speaking here tonight on their behalf. We all agree. We support this frac sand mine wash plant there. I really can't understand where this comes about, a petition, getting a hold of people and saying they don't want it. There's 6 of us. Nobody's ever contacted us. But we do support the frac sand mining, and why is it, we're in the United States. Why can't an individual do what they want on their own property?
It's called zoning.
So, that's what I'd like to say. And also, I'm going to reiterate the jobs. There are very few jobs, good paying jobs in Buffalo County. As you can see, the statistics show Buffalo County's unemployment rate is much higher than all the counties around it. We need some good paying jobs. This is the way to go.
That's not true.
Order, speaking of the man, have the floor.
I just read it in the La Crosse Tribune about 3 weeks ago. So anyway, yes, I agree, and I just support it. Like I said, we've owned this property. My father and mother bought this property in the early 60s. My brothers and sisters and I, we own it now. I spend pretty near every weekend out there during the fall. I hunt out there. I pick mushrooms, I pick berries, I turkey hunt, I deer hunt. I don't see how that's going to affect any of my recreation out there, nor for my family, my sons, my son-in-law, or my brothers and sisters. We enjoy it out there, and we support it. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Don Schnabel. Roger Ruhlman, what's your Don Valley, Cochran.
Good evening. I'd like to talk about the cumulative effects.
Closer to the mic.
I'd like to talk about the cumulative effects, and I'd like to talk about the haul route. I remember sitting through lots of painful meetings about Highway 88. We still don't know, or at least I don't know, perhaps you know, what's going on with some of the other mines that are proposing to haul down 88. until you know what volume those trucks are going to be, how can you look at the cumulative effects? You're again going by 2 high schools, you're going through the bottleneck in Nelson. And I would also like to point out that at least at this point, there is a moratorium in the town of Wabasha concerning the number of heavy truck trailers that come in. That moratorium lasts till spring and has the possibility of renewal. So I'm wondering where this sand is going to go, if it cannot go into Wabasha, and does that mean it's going to come by Fountain City?
Thank you. Roger Ruman?
Yeah.
Good evening, my name is Roger.
Excuse me, you have time to
I own
speak.
property that borders the proposed mine site, and we'd just like to say that I hope that you take into consideration what a mine site means to somebody that owns property that borders on it. Bought the property to hunt and get away from the hustle and bustle of life, and now I'm going to have a mine site just on the bluff on above my property. A mine site is a good idea when it's in somebody else's neighborhood. I ask you as board members, would you want one, next to your property? Or actually, even the folks that are proposing the mine site, if you were in my position where I was proposing the mine, would you want one in your neighborhood? I think a lot of us live where we live because of the beauty and the tranquility of the area. And I'm just concerned that with the truck traffic, the equipment operating after dark, it's going to have a dramatic impact on the quality of life in that valley, both sides Oak Valley and Sheps Valley. So I hope that you take into consideration the impacts on those of us around mine. I thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Is there anybody else that is signed in that either I don't have in front of me or I inadvertently missed?
Yeah, I wanted one more. If I can have.
Go ahead.
Jeff Falk, Fountain City. I originally wasn't going to say anything, but I heard a couple things this evening which prompted me to want to. One of the things is about air monitoring. It was mentioned before in regards to River Valley Sands that there was a question raised about the operator, and Mr. Youngbauer said, well, nobody ever asked that question. I would raise lots of questions about air monitoring, but none of you will ever ask the question, and none of you have ever given any indication as to what would be acceptable answers. They said they're going to air monitor. Do you really have no questions about what kind of air monitoring? What are they going to be monitoring? Where will the monitors be? What particulate matter size will be monitored? How often will it be monitored? Will the details be put on the web so that people can see them at the time that they're being monitored? Those are all relevant questions. Are any of you going to ask them? I could ask them, but that doesn't mean anything because you folks never do. I would like to remind you that the traffic is going to go by CFC. It's supposed to go down 88 to 35, make the turn and head up 35 to Wabasha. There's been lots of concern about traffic by the school. Thanks.
Anybody else that I missed? Sure.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak again. I just wanted to offer the following on the jobs issue. The national unemployment rate is 7.3%. The current unemployment rate here in Buffalo County is 5.7%. It seems to me that the sand industry is a solution looking for a problem. That's all I have.
Anybody else that I missed?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to sign in. I haven't signed in yet.
Okay. If you haven't signed in, please do so. Sign in before the meeting next time, please. That's it.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Members of the board, one thing I guess I've had a problem here, and I'm sure many of the other people in the audience have noticed this tonight here. When the people are speaking, I guess I'd like the courtesy of having some eye contact to know that I'm being listened to by the board, as well as other people that have spoke here tonight. One of the things that my main concern is being in the surveying and engineering industry for nearly 20 years now. My question to the board here is, why are these sand mine interests being introduced by hydrogeologists? A lot of the environmental aspects of sand mining should be addressed by an environmentalist, environmental engineer, or a civil engineer. We have not heard any testimonial from an actual engineer that's an expert in the field and is also licensed by the state of Wisconsin. We've been hearing a lot of jargon and a lot of smoke and mirrors presented to you by this hydrogeologist. For the most part, is not qualified to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that I missed here? Okay, two more. Try and get the strap up.
My name is Rachel Rich. Gerald and Cheryl Ernie are my parents. I grew up in Sheps Valley. My family has been with the land. They pretty much settled the land. And my dad has worked hard all his life for his land, and he's not gonna do anything to his land that's, I just think he should have the right, if everybody, if we're following the regulations of everything, to benefit and make something more from the land. And Kevin Rich is my husband. He's been working with professionals on this, and people that are going to be working on the land are people that are going to be knowing what they're doing. I mean, they're going to be, professionals in what they're doing. And does anybody think about the resources they use in their life and where them resources come from? What about the people that live around where they excavate the coal and the towns where that comes from? And I know that from readings and just it's fact, that does anybody think about their consideration and what they're doing to lessen their impact and where our resources that we use that don't come from our backyard? That's just how the world works. There's resources all over the world that it's kind of like a give and take. Everybody's got to, balance just our resources. And do people think about where the resources, just the simple little things that they use in their life, where does that come from? How is that affecting the people that live around where their resources come from? And what are they doing to maybe try to think about, like the coal and all that?
Thank you. Come on up.
Bonnie Zilji, 2461 State Road. My husband Terry and I live just below the intersection of 88 and Sheps Valley, just below the curve. The speed limit is 50 miles an hour. I am very afraid for the 200 semis that would be passing by, plus the cumulative effects of the trucks from the other mines. It's very scary. Next time you're down 88, glance over by our driveway. I'm asking you to please respect the wishes of the 72% of the Wamedy citizens who object to approving Badger Bluffs for all the reasons which you know. Board members, we have heard nothing about the wash plant tonight. Would you please ask Badger Bluffs to describe the size, the height, and the noise level of the wash plant? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody spoke now that was signed in. Okay. All right. Let's like to move on with the agenda here, and that would be questions to the applicant by committee members and staff. So, here's your opportunity, staff and committee. And the representatives are up here. If you'd like to ask some questions, now's the time. Ms. Dossel?
Question, Kevin.
Hey, also use the microphone, would you please?
Question on the wash plant, Kevin.
Yes.
For the size of, I mean, it sounds like minimal acres that you're doing. Why would you go through the expense of a wash plant?
I'm sorry, Tom coughed there, I didn't hear what you said.
Why would you go through the expense of building a wash plant for those minimal acres?
Well, Faye, if we're gonna travel that far, the economic reasons are behind it. We find that it's going to be, if we're gonna travel about 25 miles to our destination, we feel that we need to. If you're getting at, and I think I know where you're going with this, and I'll answer that too, because I think there's been some speculation on that. Do we foresee washing other people's sand down the road? Could happen. I mean, we don't plan this. This has not been planned at this stage. Our plan right now is for our sand. It's feasible with the deposit we have. We have 2.3 million ton, and 2.3 million ton of marketable sand. Let me put it that way. It's very cost effective for us to do this. So, which is to say we expect a profit out of it.
You do understand that if you would start washing other people's sand, this might require some modification?
There will be an amendment, I'm certain of that, and I do understand that. And do I see that happening, Tom, at this time? I can't answer that. We're not going to dismiss the fact that could happen, but we're planning a business here. And I want to touch on something. Can I touch on something here that was mentioned earlier? No, I've never mined before. I'll admit that. Everybody knows that. I never sold cars before I sold cars, and I didn't supervise before I became the youngest supervisor at the mill over both the lacrosse milling plant, over both the food and feed production areas. We're going to run a business. Badger Bluff Sands is going to be in control of their business, of their lands. It's not going to be Gerald, Ernie, and I driving to the top of the hill with a backhoe every day. We're not going to do that. We're going to hire professional miners for our company, through our company, that we're going to employ, and professional equipment operators and excavators to do the job. We've hired professional engineers to design the mine phases. And whoever, the gentleman in the green, John Dussman is an environmental engineer, as well as a hydrogeologist and geologist, so he is very qualified. We've hired an environmental engineer to advise and consult with us for our project as well. This has not been a couple months in the making here. This has been over a year and a half, okay? This is not something thought of lightly. As I said earlier, we do want to be accountable to our neighbors, okay? So I hope I answered your question there, Tom. Or Faith.
Okay, I do have a question that kind of comes off the phase here. With wash plant, are you planning to use any such chemicals, flocculants, polyacrylamides?
No. The plan right now is not for anything. We believe our deposit is very clean. Don't want to be naive in saying that. Could we foresee that happening at some point? Yes, a flocculant of some sort. Definitely not a polyacrylamide. I'm not an advocate of that, and I think John could touch on that a little more. There's some starch-based flocculants that we could use, and I would opt more for that.
Mr. Dustin,
Yeah,
could
John,
expand
do
upon
you
that?
want to elaborate a little bit more?
There's a handheld over there too that we should grab.
Well, yeah, I guess I disagree with my client in that I don't see a big problem with polyacrylamides for many reasons, and if the board would want to know those, I'd be happy to go into those. But yes, there are other alternatives out there. My understanding of the design from Cooper Engineering is that there's actually 3 separate, what I'll call raceways. Getting the fine grain material out of the sand is the name of the game. And so the longer it runs and has residence time and has a current, that material drops out. And the flocculants only speed that process up. So with more ponds, it is possible. And I also agree with Mr. Rich that the Jordan, the Van Oster member of the Jordan is probably one of the cleanest, relative clean sand deposits that we have. So I would also agree that there would be less fine grained material in the sand to start with.
Would you be comfortable as a condition, if we were going to recommend something here, that you would be able to disclose that to the public, what you're using in your washing process?
You mean a sheet, MSDS sheet?
Yeah, and knowing what
I
either the
have,
chemical.
we have no problem with that whatsoever.
Any other questions from committee and staff? Mr. Youngblower?
I know you don't have to tell me who it is, but do you have your product sold? Do you have a buyer for your product at this time?
Do not. Mr. Youngbar, I mentioned at our town meeting, we do not. I've talked to a few buyers. Nobody wants to talk to me until we receive a CUP.
And another question, how many jobs are you looking at?
We're looking at a minimum of this time with the wash plant of 6 jobs within the mine and wash plant. Hopefully around 10, and that's not counting any truck driving as well, or any of the we're gonna have pumper trucks remove the sludge from our settling ponds. That's not counting any of the local workers for that either. Full-time employees, 6 to 10 days.
And can everybody hear me all right, or do you want a mic?
You're coming through good.
Thank you. Another question, reading through your wonderfully designed book, I see you had County Highway O as an alternative route. Has that been approved through the county as an alternative route?
I believe so temporarily. Tom may be able to elaborate more on that. They talked about conditioning it as a Class B.
Yeah, the highway committee made a recommendation on that a few weeks ago, that there was no road use agreement needed for this operation, and it is the discretion of the highway commissioner per state statute 348-16 that he can post that as a Class B highway, which essentially would not allow this operation to use County Road O for a loaded haul route. That was the recommendation of the highway committee.
But could be used on an empty, or not used at all?
There was a tonnage limit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I cannot remember what the tonnage limit.
Tom, I wanted to say it was around 12 or 13, but I'm sorry, I don't recall.
I'm not gonna answer that. I can get the answer for you.
60%. Scott, our engineer, does somebody want to hear from, go ahead. Scott Belsavage.
Hi there, it's my understanding Class B drops it down to 60% of what the normal rating is.
48,000.
But then, with that being said, they could come back empty.
I guess, Faye, yes, but that's not our plan. Stop putting ideas in my head.
Just a question.
Mr. Zigway, did you have a question?
I have several questions. Again,
Yeah.
congratulations on
Yeah.
it's a beautifully designed application. But several instances here, your design criteria of a 10-year, 24-hour type 2 storm
Yes.
is referenced.
Mhm.
Is that going to be adequate given the degree of slope you've got in Ships Valley and the narrowness of the valley?
Now you'll hear from our engineer, Jim. I'm gonna have him answer that, Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott Belsavage with Cooper Engineering. And the question you're asking about is a 10-year storm, and that's what we would expect to occur about once every 10 years, or 10% reoccurrence. And what we're looking at with our design for Kevin's operation here is a 100-year design. I'm not going to commit to it at this point because we're still working out some of the fine details on that. But a 10-year storm, when we look at a steep hillside, we have to look at the runoff that would occur in a 10-year event. So the fact that it's steep or flat doesn't really matter because that's a separate parameter that's put into that event. So the 10-year occurrence is based on what sort of rainfall we'd expect to come out of the sky, and then we look at the runoff conditions based on steep slopes or flat slopes, and we do condition that. So a 10-year event on a steep slope will create a lot of water very quickly, and we know that. But we're even looking at a 100-year event to make sure that we have sizing adequate in place to protect the public and Kevin's operation.
All right. The second question that I've got then is that I'm familiar with Buffalo County slopes. My one leg is a little shorter than the other one. So I know that anytime you have a slope along a highway or on a hillside that's greater than a certain percentage, it's tough to hold your soil there when you get heavy rainfall. When we get those saturating rains of 6 and 8 and 10 and 12 inches over a 2-week period of time, all of a sudden the trees' roots aren't strong enough to hold it anymore, and you get slide outs and mudslides, such as occurred again this last summer between Arcadia and Blair on Highway 95. What assurances can you give us that your slopes are going to hold, number one, and number two, I question whether or not you wouldn't want to have something with a 65-degree slope, because above your ponds, for stormwater ponds, was the greatest problem in Trempealeau County's mines this last year, because the stormwater ponds were all inadequate, even though designed by some of the best engineering firms and mining firms in the country. And if we could have the same thing happen there, then you got an answer for that one?
I have an answer. I don't know if it's precisely what you're looking for, and let me know if I don't answer your question. We have worked on 20 mine sites in Wisconsin in the last 3 years. And in the last 2 years, we've seen failures. Most of those failures are occurring right within a mine. Like you said, a stormwater pond, an edge of a pond failing, sloughing into the pond. Now they have to work with it. Fortunately, those failures are happening within the mine site and not leading to pollution or erosion going off the site. So we are familiar with that. So when you start throwing out percent slopes or angle of repose or terms like that, we're very familiar with that. And we are looking at that with our erosion control plan element of the reclamation plan. Because an erosion control plan it's part of reclamation. You know, it's temporary erosion during the operation, and we're designing for that. And then the second part of that is the permanent erosion control. When we're done with this project, our intent is to make sure that everything is going to be secure. Before Kevin can say the site is fully reclaimed, he's going to have to make sure that everything is secure as far as erosion. And that's what is intended in our plan. The precise details here and there, there's so many on this site because we have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. I realistically can't get into every detail right now at this meeting, and we're still working on some of those details because right now we don't have the reclamation plan 100%, but we are working on that. We're very comfortable with the footprint that we have indicated for those stormwater ponds and for where we show ditches and channels to catch the water that before it gets to the mine site, and then also water before, or that's processed and going through the mine site itself. We're very comfortable with the systems that we're looking at in place. Most of those will probably be riprap line channels. rock line channels, because those will have the best shear, be able to fight the shear action of the water that's gonna occur.
Just a second, Mr. Ziegler, I want to ask another question regarding the phases in reclamation. In phase 3 here, that would be the Oak Valley side, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Is that one of your bigger challenges in having your infiltration ponds and stormwater ponds?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is it impossible or just more difficult? And I know you're still working on it, but please add as much detail as you possibly can there.
Sure. On phase 3, if short of a technical term, it's the nose of a hill. And what we're going to do is go into that nose of the hill and reshape it and excavate out material. Well, the concern we have when we look at that is that first dig, that first opening that area, and how do we protect it? And that's something that we're in discussion with them right now as far as their mining operations and what's planned. We're also talking to other professionals in the industry on that. But it is the most challenging of the 3 phases. Fortunately, it's the 3rd phase, and you'll have more experience, and they'll have more experience working in the soils in that area. But what we're looking at doing on that one is actually, if we talk about that 970 or 980 elevation of the lower part of that sandstone that we're looking for, if we start there and we dig into the hill, basically, or we start up above and we start to move that material out of there, they're going to have the conveyor system in place. They're going to be able to move that material out of there relatively easily. As soon as we get enough open, we're going to actually dig down and create a sump within that mine floor. We're going to over-excavate, and that's indicated in some of the plans that we've started here. And that's going to be internal capture or infiltration. And that's still going to be in a sandstone material, so it's going to infiltrate relatively quick. And we've done sizing calculations on phase 3, and the entire floor, we're going to have enough room to store the overburden and infiltrate the up to 100-year storm event within that mine. The biggest concern that we have is that initial startup and the erosion control steps that are taking place during that process. We're aware of that.
Do the proximity of the property lines, not just necessarily the mine boundary, the property lines pose adversities to the reclamation on phase 3 there?
Well, yes. If they own all the land underneath it, it would make it easier.
Okay.
It does create a challenge, and we're aware of that challenge. Okay. And we realize that we cannot allow erosion by design or by, the practices out there to occur and just discharge off the site, because that is the definition of erosion. So we want to limit that.
And that is spelled out by, I'm guessing, something in the DNR statutes?
Yes, that is the definition of erosion, is if it leaves your site.
Okay.
And
that was my concern, because actually phase 2 and phase 1, not that they don't go off the property at a later time, but I'll call it a buffer. There's a time that it's going to stay on the property here from a storm event on this owner's property.
I think that's what John was touching on with the design of the benching, Tom.
Yep. Mr. Ziegler.
My last question is relative to the road.
Yeah.
Chips Valley Road is this really a single lane road? And I question whether 2 counterposing semis can get by each other without one having to pull off on the shoulder.
He'll talk your ear off if I give it back. But he's the guy to ask that to.
It's all right, because I think it's relevant. Are you going to start the road rebuild before you start the mine?
Again,
let me answer that one. I think I should be the guy to answer that. As I think Bonnie maybe brought that up. I think Jim or Nettie maybe. They've been to every town board meeting as well. By the way, we have been approved by our town board 2-1. That's been discussed. We offered that we will repair Sheps Valley Road to a haulable level, a much more haulable level. What that level is right now, it hasn't been determined. There's been suggestions of what we should do, but pending our CUP approval, that's not been determined yet. So that's going to be agreed upon with our town board. Is it wide enough for 2 semis passing each other? Well, I'm going to pass that to Scott at this point. But yes, we do understand that we have to make a certain amount of repairs prior at our own expense, okay, at Badger Bluff's expense, not the townships, not the counties, prior to hauling and maintain it at that level, no less of a level. We have agreed to do that. Did I make myself clear on that point?
Abundantly.
Okay, great.
Now I've got another question.
Yeah, the two trucks passing, I'll let Scott answer that one.
Well, regarding the two trucks passing, that is a traffic flow question. And what we're looking at when Kevin asked, what is it gonna take to make Sheps Valley Road work for this operation? We looked at it and our initial thought was that you're gonna have to do some patching, you're gonna have to do some work on this route to make it haulable. And on the tangent sections or the straight sections, we're not looking at that much of a concern as far as the pavement width that's out there. I believe it's gonna be fine. And that's based on engineering judgment. But on the corners, we're looking at some concern. And what we're gonna recommend is that there's some minor widening on the corners, on the inside of the corners to, pave the shoulders and create a little more comfort for not only two semis, because those are professional drivers, but the local person driving in a semi coming, we wanna make sure it's a comfortable drive for them also. So we are gonna make recommendations on that. And we have put together a letter for Kevin to evaluate and look at as far as spot locations and improvements along that route. But along the straight sections, we're very comfortable with there being enough width there. It's just the shoulder maintenance may have to be increased over time, but then Kevin will be accommodating that with other mechanisms that he's gonna work out with the township.
And the bridge?
The bridge itself has been looked at, we've evaluated with our staff, and the hauling that is proposed falls in between what's called an inventory rating and an operational rating. An operational rating is, let's say, the maximum amount you want to really haul across that bridge in a given amount of time. For example, a house move. We would look and we would want to see what that operational rating is on that bridge to see if we can move a house across the structure. And that's more of the severe case. The inventory rating is what it can sustain indefinitely without any adverse impact or accelerated wear and tear. It's actually a little bit the standard truck that, the legal loaded truck driving across that right now is actually above the inventory rating. So what has been discussed so far with the township is to look at an accelerated inspection schedule on that bridge, because I believe the county has a 2-year schedule and they'd be looking at something that probably the first year 2 inspections and then 1 every year after to make sure there's nothing that would be concern on there. There also was a couple minor wear and tear items, looking at the plates, some of the tin plates or whatever, and then also the asphalt surface might be looked at as part of that roadway, getting it ready for hauling activity would be to top dress that asphalt that's on there now.
The next question I have, the linear feet from phase 3 out to phase 1, I assume that will just be the finished sand that's coming out of phase 3 moving over to the wash plant, right? So the overburden and all of
That's correct.
the other stuff will remain with phase
Within the mine site, correct.
Did you ever consider that if you had put the wash plant in Oak Valley, that it might have been easier to move downhill and into a better road situation going
Jim?
through Oak Valley?
That was very, very much considered. The townsfolk at the time during the town meetings expressed themselves and did not want that, and they said keep it over in your own valley, and we complied. That's what we did.
One last question. The 2-to-1 approval by the Wamedy Town Board,
Yes.
was that at the meeting that we were out in Harmony Town Hall?
It was August 27th? I don't know, were you there? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Had the Wamedy Town Board witnessed this conditional use permit application?
I believe so.
That was as of July.
Yeah, it was in July 22nd. I think they have they had a copy. I know that. I can't answer you. I believe each member did, Jim.
Well, it was my understanding at the Wamedy meeting, it was a general meeting as to whether members of the Wamedy Township wanted to allow mining, and one of the reasons given by a board member was that in the event that somebody wanted to operate a stone quarry, a gravel quarry,
Okay.
or small sand operations, they didn't want to preclude that, but it didn't include as much this kind of testimony that you would normally expect, that if they were going to approve it as a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment, they would be seeing this first then, right?
Yes, they all got a copy of that, and I think Tom is here, one of the supervisors or superintendents. Yeah, Tom, is that the case? You all were presented with a copy, correct?
Yes.
If anybody, he said yes.
Thanks.
So, yeah.
That's it.
Your conveyor system,
Yes, sir.
that is dry sand, that's not a slurry, not a pipe?
No, not a slurry, not a pipe. It will, well, 1 to 4% moisture content, perhaps, whatever comes out of the hill at.
That's pretty dry.
Yeah.
Okay. No, reason I asked that, I was just throwing a situation up in Chippewa County earlier today, that they actually pump it as a slurry.
Okay, yeah.
That's the reason I asked.
Yep, that is not our intent or our proposal.
I got questions here for Mr. Dustman.
Sure.
Can you please explain infiltration basin, stormwater ponds, and settling ponds, and how they either work together or how they're independent and what their job is?
Yeah, that would be an engineering question. I do need to correct Mr. Rich. I am not an environmental engineer. I've owned my own firm for over 20 years and have hired hundreds and hundreds of everything from biologists, chemists, and engineers, geological engineers. So I'm a geologist and a hydrogeologist.
Sorry. Scott?
Okay, so you're asking infiltration basin, stormwater basin, and settlement. Okay, good. First of all, an infiltration basin is simply a basin that is designed to capture water and to allow it to percolate into the ground. And that is what it is designed to do. The infiltration rates are assigned either through testing or through known geological formations, and we look at that. So we design for the infiltration. So if there's a storm event, the water runs into it, and we anticipate how quick it will leave that infiltration basin. If for some reason it's not leaving that fast, there may be maintenance needed. Pull out the material, the silts or whatever that might be plugging it up. A stormwater basin is the bigger picture, and that is where we're looking at the stormwater that is collected on a site. Let's say that we have any sort of development site. We're going to put a stormwater basin in that'll capture the runoff from that site. The stormwater basin may infiltrate, it may allow for paste discharge, or it may entirely just hold it and be processed some other method. And when I said paste discharge, what I mean by that is there may be a control structure on it. Let's say that you have a manhole at one end of that pond that has a small hole in that manhole at one end where it allows the water to run into it, and then a pipe is discharging through the dike or whatever to a ravine or whatever. So that you can pace the discharge, because if you look at like a large parking lot, if it was a field converted to a parking lot, you're going to increase the rate of the runoff. So you're going to want to hold some back in that stormwater basin and put a smaller orifice or whatever to allow that water to discharge at a pace similar to what was occurring before. You don't want to stop all runoff, but you want to mimic the condition that was there before. When you look at settling ponds, what we're talking about in this industry, in the wet plants, when you wash the sand, you get a slurry out of there quite often. And you want to settle it out, that water, because it's pretty dirty. So it's going to go into what we have is actually two primary settling ponds that are designed to be maintained. And they may be maintained every 3 or 4 days on site. And that's why we're looking at about 50 feet of operational space between those. So they can actually do their work on site and maintain those ponds and pull that slurry out of there. That settles somewhat. After the first primary ones is a secondary settling basin. So the clear water off the top is allowed to flow then into a secondary settling basin, and it settles further. The water becomes a little bit clearer, and then prior to discharge, or at the discharge end, then it goes into what we call a final clarification pond. And that's where they'll have a system of piping that'll then reclaim the water and put it back into the wash plant. And that's how we recycle the water. The lessons learned from the other mines and from the other processes that we've been involved with indicated that, initially people were saying we need one primary, one secondary, and we can deal with it with a final clarifier. We found that we absolutely need to have two primaries with these set wash plants because they fill up relatively quick, and we want to make sure we're ready for that.
I'm looking at your map here. Phases 2 and 3 are right now all forest, correct?
That's correct.
And phase 1 looks like it's 50% woodland?
Yeah, the
Approximately?
mining, the mining, the excavation area, Dennis, for that phase is all woodland.
On 2 and 3? Or
On 2 and 3 and on 1. The actual product is in a wooded area. The parcel does extend into agricultural acreage right now.
Yeah, I know the field
Yep.
here. Yeah, 'cause
The
that's-
yellow line would indicate, yeah.
Right here's, that should be right about there.
It's hard to pick out here, but
Yeah.
you're going down to about 980. That's the bottom elevation on that end.
Okay, so
Yep.
all 3 phases will be clear cutting.
Yes.
Other question, I know it's none of this committee's concerned, but having driven on Sheps Valley Road with these corners that need considerable widening, do you have enough right-of-way that is available to you to widen these corners out so two semis can meet safely on those corners? Because a couple of them, as I recall, are basically 90s.
Do we have the right of way, I think
I mean,
was your question.
Is there enough legal right of way that you have? I don't know what it is on a town, is it 2 rods or 3?
I think it's 33 feet from the center.
I would anticipate that road right now is an unplatted road. We have not done an evaluation to see if there has been a plat done, but if there's not a plat, then it would be what's considered a 4 rod or a 66-foot right of way based off of the center of the existing traveled way. So then it would be 33 feet out from either center line.
Okay.
And that's what I would expect out there at this point, unless it's been platted or otherwise documented by survey. With that, though, the question is, do we have the right of way to do the work? I'm not certain on that. We have not done an engineering plan to improve the road. We have looked at the current condition of the road, and we've made general recommendations to provide a budget. But we have not engineered it or designed a plan, and we may not. Maybe the township will hire somebody else independent to come in and do that design when they're all done with the project or sometime during the project.
Thank you.
Zigway.
In the event that the township engineers the road, hires it redesigned and rebuilt, and they just pass the bill to you and you pay it?
I think that's what Bonnie was getting at, if it was Bonnie, I'm not sure, or Nettie. No, that was not the agreement with the town. We agreed that it would have to be somewhat cost efficient for us too. I mean, Jim, that's what I was getting at. We can't put us underneath before we even get started here. We agreed with our township, and we accepted, in which they reciprocated that we will come to an agreement to a much more haulable level and make modifications and repairs to that road that will allow us to do what we're asking, with the proposal, and maintain it at that level, and also establish a road fee to be put away in a fund that will be used for repairs if necessary.
May I ask Tom George?
Sure.
Is that the town board's understanding of the situation too on the roads?
It's Tom Bagneski and.
Tom
Tom
Bagneski.
Bagneski?
There is an agreement, I'm not, the wording on it is different, I won't say either way, what exactly it is.
It was established prior to Tom's position on the board, or his election to the board. Yeah. I think there's a copy, Jim, if I'm not mistaken, in the application.
Yeah, there is.
Yep. And it's laid out right there with the actual verbiage of what was used.
Appendix C, I believe. I read it. The page is- I temporarily lost it. I don't know how I could possibly lose it in a short book. I believe it's appendix C.
I think you're right too,
It's in the town meeting.
Okay,
Town meeting minutes, yep.
yep, okay, Mr. Ziegler, hand me
You want this?
Okay, I'll read it here. This is the minutes from the April 9th, 2013 Wamedy Town Board meeting. About halfway down. Board discussed whether or not to have a road agreement with Mississippi Connection Timber and Land Company.
That's us.
That is, okay, thank you. Is beneficial at this time because Peter Stoltman, Buffalo County Zoning, had spoken with Rick Ryder stating it was a good idea. Kevin Rich has had extensive research done on Sheps Valley Road. Rick felt that the following proposal should be put in the form of a motion. Rick Ryder moved the town of Wamedy may negotiate the terms of a road use agreement for a portion of Sheps Valley Road with the Mississippi Connection Land and Timber Company, Gerald and Cheryl Ernie, and all agents that may represent them. This note negotiation may occur following the Buffalo County Board of Adjustments approval of their industrial sand mine in Sheps Valley. The operator shall obtain an agreement with the applicable township before the mine product can be hauled on any town roadway. Seconded by John Sandelbach, motion carried 3-0. Question answered, Mr. Ziegler?
Yes. Although it still doesn't make me comfortable with the thought that the township is gonna pick up the expense for the road.
No, the township's not going to pick up the expense for the road.
Thank you.
Yeah, for the repairs that we're going to make prior to hauling. Yeah. No, we are not putting in a brand new road. That's never been agreed upon, and that's what I was getting at. I think that the expense would not allow us to operate.
Yeah, I've got one question here, and I know we're paying all over the board, but I'm just going through my notes as I took them. Obviously, the high-capacity well is the concern of DNR, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We currently don't have anything in place here, nor does the county have really any means of administering any program right now. Would you consider having a condition there that would disclose your water usage, just like I asked about with any of your chemicals used in the washing process? That way people know what kind of water usage is here.
Yeah, we've, Tom, I think, we are agreeing to drill a test well for water usage, water level. So, I mean, we don't intend, nor do we want to overuse the water in the area. We do not want to draw down the aquifer. We don't expect that will happen to a level that is not adequate or acceptable.
The water use would be limited by the DNR's high-capacity well permit, and there would be routine reporting, which would then be public information.
Okay. Is that done quarterly, annually, monthly?
Monthly,
Just about
generally,
monthly.
yes.
Okay.
With an annual summary, correct.
Okay. And that information would be available to the public, site-specific for what this mine would be using?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Air monitoring. Let's talk about that. Give us some background on what you'd like to do for air monitoring.
Well, I'm going to pass that one to Mr. Dustman here. Go ahead, John.
We would first look at collecting the background weather data, then we would hire an independent air quality expert to site 2 monitors. One in an upwind direction, one in a downwind direction, most likely nears the closest receptor. They would be, the model number I believe is an ADR 1500, which our research has shown has led us to. It's a continuous air monitor. It takes, we can set it to take readings about every minute. I think we probably wouldn't do that. We'd set it up at about 5 minutes. We've deployed 3 or 4 of these units and they're working fantastic. They're in combination with the weather station. We can see humidity, wind speed, wind temperature. They are retrofitted with a filter that we can then do what's called a gravimetric analysis on a monthly basis to evaluate what exactly is in the fugitive dust that the monitor is sensing. And I really can't wait to do some scanning electron microscopy on that to not only to break it down even further, because I don't believe there will be any newly fractured crystalline silica in any of the air that's monitored in these sites.
Would this be indicative of other activities in the area related to agricultural seasonally that this would pick up?
Well, yeah, and that's kind of some of the early data that we've seen over the, like, say, the last 6 months to a year would indicate that the up gradient or the upwind monitor mirrors the downwind monitor, and that obviously the ambient air coming onto the site has as much or more fugitive dust than the site is generating. The other thing that I'm just a real big fan of continuous data is just for that. Okay, there needs to be a cause and effect. If your particle emissions are coming up at 8 in the morning and stabilizing during the day and then going down at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock at night, and that happens every day, is the mine adding fugitive dust to the environment? Absolutely. I mean, it's repeatable, you can see it every day, you can even track it back to individual actions that are going on. You don't have to run the crusher all the time. So when the crusher is running, do you see higher levels of particulates in the ambient air than you do when the crusher isn't running? Again, we know when the crusher runs, and so you can graph when the crusher's on and off, and then you can compare that to these 5-minute readings to be able to see whether there is a cause and effect relation between what the operations are on site and what your air quality indicators are.
Do you have a dust suppression plan?
It's mandatory for OSHA, yes. It hasn't been completed, but certainly it'll be like all the other ones.
Okay, for instance, what about the stockpiling of sand? Is that something that you would water down in the certain conditions?
Yes.
Mr. Youngbauer?
Well, now as we mentioned stockpiles, what are you looking at? How big and how many tons are you anticipating having the stockpile on an average week or whatever?
We plan, good question, thanks Dennis. We plan for finished product stockpiles within right around the wet plant area of 40,000 ton. And then there's an additional stockpile to the northwest of the wash plant that would also hold an additional approximately 20,000 ton. There will be a small, workable, working, raw stockpile, approximately 7,000 to 10,000 ton as well.
And they would be approximately how tall?
That's escaping me right now. I can find that out very quickly for you.
Between 20 and 30 feet.
20, 30 feet. All right, that's close enough.
Yeah, I think Greg is 37 foot.
I believe it was 37 foot actually, Dennis.
When we're dealing with heights here, there was a question raised earlier. How tall are any of your structures going to be as related to the processing equipment with the wet plant?
Yeah, the very tippy top of our wash plant, excluding the pad thickness would be around 4 to 5 feet, as I'm told, was 50 feet. The tallest point of the structure itself.
I'm trying to find that in our zoning ordinance, because I know we discussed that in the 100 feet. Thank you.
Yeah, 75 foot. If you have a structure that's going to be approaching the buffer zone and it exceeds 75 feet, it must be at least at a minimum the same distance away from the property line. I believe is pretty much how your ordinance reads.
Kevin, question, you have said it's gonna take about 10 years, you figure, that you're going maybe for a 20-year.
That's not entirely correct, accurate, I should say. If you did the math, Faye, and everything in a perfect world for us worked, we could have this done in 5.5 to 5 3/4 years. Do we anticipate that happening? Gosh, I hope so. But in reality, no. I mean, that's why we're looking for a little latitude. I mean, how long is it going to take us eventually to move the conveyors from one phase to another? You know, how bad of a spring was it this spring? And it rained and rained and rained and you couldn't get in there. I mean, you know, there's a lot of factors and variables here that we have to consider as well. And so we're looking for a 10-year application.
Yes. So I guess where I'm getting at, you would be doing your own parcels first before taking on any additional?
Without question. I know where you're going.
Hours of operation?
Hours of operation, 7 to 7, Monday through Friday. We would like to operate on Saturdays as dictated, as I said, in the application by the market. Wash plant operation hours, we are seeking a maximum of 18 hours a day. Don't expect that to happen, but again, in reaction to the market demands, we would like to be able to do that.
And hauling hours,
7 to 7,
7 to 7.
correct.
Excavation, same thing.
Yes, 12 hours, 7 to 7, correct.
Your driver's gonna run out of time by the end of the week. On their logbooks.
Yeah, that could happen.
Well,
Again, yeah.
Well, it will happen if they're on duty for 12 hours a day. You're only down at X number of hours, depending upon if you're working on a 7-day schedule, I believe, or a 9 days, 8-day schedule.
Yeah.
I didn't bring my logbook.
That's for the trucking firms. We are not employing the trucking outfit firms. Okay, they're gonna be independent operator owners, yep.
All right.
Can you address some of the concerns raised by adjacent landowners and the contacts made with them?
Yeah, there was an attempt, there was contact or an attempt for contact with every adjacent landowner except for 2. There was support. The landowners to the west, Leon Komorowski was here. I think you heard his testimony. The Rosses and Komorowski's own primarily, and in conjunction with Mary and Ernie, which is Gerald's mother, entirely along our phase 2 and 3 to the west. The entire border. They are behind us. They are for it. To the north, Mick Coolig to the north has expressed some concern. Mick and I had about an hour-long conversation in March, and we had discussed, my knowledge of what it was at that point in time. Per the township meeting, I am of the understanding he is not for it at this point. To our east of phase 1, and a little bit on phase 2 would be Dave Baker. He is in support of Baker's Acres. He is in support of our operation. And Shane Andre would be also to the east of phase 2. And the Navarre property would be to the east of our phase 3 and south of our phase 3. I have not been able to successfully make contact with the Navarres. I am of the understanding that they are for it, at least that's what I've been told, but they want it done right. And Shane and I had a discussion in early April about our mine property, and I'm not certain, he did not speak at our town meeting, so I can't answer with any certainty of where he stands on it.
Kuhn property?
Kuhn property, I did not talk to Weldon Kuhn.
No, that appears to be agricultural land on
Yes,
top of the ridge?
that is correct. We are not directly impacting with mining in conjunction with his property, if you will. I mean, the excavation, which is to say the excavation is not happening bordering Weldon Kuhn.
Properties to the south?
That would be Navarre. Navarre, like I said, Ross's and Komorowski's owned directly to our west.
Roger Reeman's?
Yeah, Mr. Riemann does, there's a corner there, I guess, right? What was that term in geometry? The angle, he is to the southwest of us. And I have not contacted Roger.
Are there any assurances that the property values won't be damaged with this mine coming in for the land, or the residents in the area?
We're not offering any at this point, Dennis. I've done some extensive research myself on that. I can provide a copy to you. I provided them at the town meeting. That has not been a trend in the state. And that's not my information. That's information coming from the Department of Revenue of this state. So at this time, no.
request by adjacent property owners for such an assurance?
You know, Jim, I've reached out to quite a few of them. I've not heard, no one wants to start a dialogue. They want to work through the county system, so no. There's been none directly to me. No.
Staff, do you have any questions? I haven't really asked you yet.
I did have a question, okay, it's already
Okay.
asked a question.
Any other questions of the committee or staff? I guess one thing, talking about landowners, a comment made about a petition. Are you aware about anything of this, Mr. Rich, or would you like to address that?
I've heard a rumor of a petition, more so of the survey, Tom. There was a survey that was, I don't think it was, to my knowledge, by an unbiased third party administered, but I did receive a ballot, if you will, and the survey in the mail as a property owner in Wamedy Township. I am aware of that. I believe at the time, and I'm a little sketchy on the numbers, I really didn't want to have to address it or acknowledge it, but I think it was 30-some% of the town of Wamedy responded, and of that, I believe at the time it was 72 or 74% supposedly were not in favor of our sand mine. There's one more point there that I would like to address, since you brought that up. There was a survey in April, the general election, which was about sand mining. It was a record turnout in Wamedy. 70%, 71% of the voters, somewhere in that area, and the residents of Wamedy Township turned out to vote. 60% of those that came to the polls voted for the non-anti candidates. Okay? The candidates, they voted 60% voted for the candidates that were in favor of sand mining.
Any other questions that you'd like to ask of the applicants? Mr. Zigway?
I would imagine that it wouldn't be a matter of concern to your firm or your company about whether or not this cumulative effect would be a problem from the standpoint of marketing. But would cumulative effect be a problem from the standpoint of marketing be a consideration? Because right now we've got a lot of operations in Trempealeau County that are geared to run but not running. Because they're saying there's no opening or they don't have a home for it, or...
I'm hearing, Jim, and again I'm going to reiterate, I'm hearing that there are very active buyers out there. And I'm hearing that from sources that are in the know. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, I can't make good contact with anyone right now that is interested in buying because I don't have a conditional use permit. You're talking about cumulative effect. I keep hearing about cumulative effect. I keep hearing about it. I understand it. I'm not, we get that point. But so far, I think probably, and this is my opinion and I'm assuming here, but if I was guessing, from what I know, I would guess that you guys would have thought there would have been more applications so far at Buffalo County for non-metallic mining than there has been thus far. That's my guess. I know of 2 that have come in since the moratorium ended. I don't know of any more. Has there been any more? Has there been? Okay.
There will be.
Okay. Well, there will be, but there's only been 2 so far that I know of.
There has been a application for a quarry, so. But that,
Oh, okay.
That
Sure.
does fall in the, so technically.
Same, technically 3 then. I
But
stand
as far as
corrected.
sand mining,
Yes, and it's not running rampant. There are questions. There are theories that the market is soft. This is a leap of faith right here for us. We're out on a limb too. I understand the concerns of the residents of this county. We have the same concerns. We live here. We understand that. There's no guarantee right now that we will ever operate. I hope we do. We think we stand a chance to. This is why we're spending money and employing the professionals that we have to have the opportunity. You know, this is a landowner's rights issue. I find that being very much a landowner's rights issue. But yeah, the cumulative effect, I don't see any cumulative effect at this point. I'll be honest. We have a successful operating sand mine in Buffalo County, the Barth mine down in Buffalo Township. That's really the only one that's still bringing product to the market that I know of.
Anybody on staff, can you concur that?
Yeah, that's accurate. The only other operational mine is the Sigerstrom mine, but they haven't been hauling any product out of there. So.
That's my understanding as well.
So it's a little hard to measure cumulative effect when there's no accumulation.
That's correct.
Problem, and I can understand it from the standpoint of your operation, you're concerned with your operation. It's at the pressure points like the Alma school or the CFC school that you'd have the problem occurring if you had multiple things coming up. I can understand also that Buffalo County's roads are calf paths. They're not highways that are well traveled. You can run 1,000 loads out of Arcadia every day down Highway 93 to Centerville and over to Winona with no problem, but you can't run 100 loads down Highway 88 without a problem. And so,
Yeah, that's according to the state. I mean, we're maintaining, we're within the parameters of what the state allows.
I understand that.
So.
I understand that, but that doesn't preclude the fact that if you want to come out of Wamedy with anything, it's got to come down stream. Highway 88, because it's virtually impossible to go up across U, double X, or X.
We were thinking about getting C-130s in there to airlift it out, Jim, but we didn't find that would be cost effective either for us. So you're right, yes. We're going to 88 at that point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Reclamation plan is currently not completed yet, but obviously before it could go before Board of Adjustment, that would have to be completed.
I'm calling it 99.99, probably 100. My engineer says 98. He and I are disagreeing tonight on that, but you will have one shortly to you. Yes.
Other questions of the committee to the applicant or staff?
One for the staff.
Go ahead.
Are we staffed adequately to handle sand mine, or is that pending?
It's pending. We've offered the second technician position to someone, but they haven't accepted it yet.